This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski, and we've got a jam-packed show for you. It really feels like when we get around to recording this podcast, so much wrestling has happened, and I tend to forget Monday Night Raw was only like 4 or 5 days ago because it just feels like there's been so much going on. On this week's episode, we have our live reactions. Maybe not live, but we have our reactions to what took place at AEW's Dynamite and AEW's Rampage because we were in the house in LCA. We've got to give you the lowdown on what's going on with WWE and with the ins and outs. Of course, we've got a pay-per-view that we're just coming off of. We've got a pay-per-view that we're going into, so we're going to give you the results from Forbidden Door, and we're going to give you your predictions for Money in the Bank. Of course, we've got news and notes and rumors. We've got the latest on what's going on with Sasha Banks, and this AEW star may be on his way out of the company. Sounds like he's pretty unhappy. It sounds like him and his tag partner have a little bit of issues. So we're going to get that. We're going to break it all down. Doing it with me, as always, he's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Daddy-O in the house. I'm looking forward to this podcast recording. It was great to take in wrestling with you, to see the excitement, and to at least get a little clip of us on television highlighting when Chris Jericho climbed the cage at LCA. We're all looking like in awe, and you're pointing like, oh, you saw something that got you excited. Alyssa was freaking out like, oh my God, what's going to happen? These people are actually getting on the cage. And anytime, look, even though obviously taking a fall from a cage requires a pristine amount of preparation, anytime a wrestler jumps off a cage and lands anywhere, it's worth the price of admission. Now I've seen Shane McMahon do it and Sammy Guevara. Boy, even though obviously there was a lot of injuries at AEW, the blood and guts match by itself, if we just walked in, lower the cage, all the entrances, that match, it would have been worth the price of admission because it was just so much shit going on. It was crazy. And it really capped off what I thought was a great week for AEW because I love Forbidden Door. I watched it in the theater. I thought it was great to do. I haven't been in a movie theater, so it wasn't like I was like clamoring to watch wrestling in a movie theater. I just haven't been in the theater in almost a year, I think. Not into movies all that much these days. I'm a big sports guy. So I'm like, fuck it. Even though I'm doing this solo, Adam and Kenny had their things going on and they got, you know, like myself, they're falling into bed by 10 p.m. like me. But
bro,
I said,
work comes early for both Kenny and I. 4 in the morning comes so early.
The 4 a.m. club. But I'm in the same boat. I'm getting up early, and I faded. But I said, fuck it, I'm going to go. And I sat there, and it was maybe 10 people in the whole theater out of like 40 seats. So it was great because the audio and to see it up there, I was into it. And I thought, by and large, for what they wanted to accomplish, Forbidden Door did a lot of good things. There wasn't too many times where there was lulls, and the matches were pretty sweet. And it went kind of the way in which we thought it would go. So it made it for an enjoyable time. I enjoyed what the Japanese wrestlers were able to do and what they brought. The blessing is, over the last couple of years, Adam has sprinkled in talk about New Japan and said, hey, pay attention to Will Ospreay, pay attention to Okada. So I watched some Okada versus Omega, watched a lot of New Japan wrestling, and boy, I just kept saying to myself as I was watching Will Ospreay, I said, why is the WWE so stupid and behind the 8 ball? They should have snatched up Will Ospreay and Jay White way before they ever got to AEW because they're talented. How do you not highlight dudes that when you look at them and you say, God damn, Will Ospreay is among the best 3 wrestlers in the entire world. So fluid, so amazing. Jay White. Unfortunately, there was one thing that I would rate as being a little bit subpar, and it, you know, and it's really for me nitpicking because it's not a big deal. But a lot of fans were not happy with the false 3 counts that potentially marred it because it is and I understand why the fans are mad when an official goes 1-2 and it looks like he hits 3 because that really is probably the last line of defense for integrity. And if you are supposed to win the match or lose the match, if you botch the 3 count, the fans do not like it. And a couple of times that was a little bit wonky in the card. But by and large, I give it an A-. I enjoyed it top to bottom. I thought, if this is what Forbidden Door 1 looks like, please do it in Japan, make it an annual thing. You get an extra pay-per-view, and you get the storylines, even though they weren't the best developed. I thought it was worth it top to bottom.
Yeah, I thought the pay-per-view was outstanding. And you said it best. It never felt like there was a lull. When we have pay-per-views this massive, we know the card, we know going in that it's going to be a solid 4, maybe 5 hours long. It becomes really tough sometimes. It becomes a really hard show. This show at no point did it ever feel like you dipped down. You felt like you were on a roller coaster ride that just kept going and going and going and getting higher and higher and higher, and you never really had that come down. It was great. It was absolutely great. It was well paced. It was a really, really good show. Everybody performed really, really well. I thought this was arguably one of AEW's better pay-per-views. You know, for me, top 5, definitely top 10 for anything AEW has ever done. And AEW has put on a lot of really good shows. And like you said, going in, storylines weren't really developed, but you got really good action. Once you got that action in the ring, you were hooked. And from start to finish, like, I watched everything on this show. I watched all of the pre-show. I ended up watching every single match on this card. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was a great, great show. Before we get into what actually took place with the Fallouts, I do want to give a shout out to somebody who listens and subscribes to our content. I was at the gym the other day, and this gentleman, Chuck, who was working at the gym, was like, "Oh, I think I listened to your podcast." I was like, "Do you?" And then, like, we started talking, and he was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Definitely I do." He's like, "I've subscribed to your YouTube channel. I've subscribed to where I can get you guys every week." I was like, "Oh, well, thanks." So Chuck listens to this program, so I just want to say shout out to Chuck. Shout out to everybody who downloads our stuff and listens to us. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the feedback. It's absolutely fantastic. So thanks, Chuck, for downloading and letting me know that you listen. We do appreciate that. Getting into the results though from Forbidden Door. Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi end up defeating Aaron Solo and QT Marshall. That was to kick off the pre-show. Lance Archer and Nick Comoroto end up having a match. Lance Archer ends up beating Nick Comoroto. That was kind of thrown in there. That was not on our card, so that was a late addition. Not mad about it though. I think Nick Comoroto has a lot of potential if they can figure something out with him. Lance Archer is kind of a beast. Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee defeat Kamaru and El Desperado. After the match, we set up Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs to take on Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee. I want to know where you're at with this feud, because this feud, it felt like we got there, and then it never really felt like we had a conclusion to it, and it seems like we're going back there. It's like the feud that won't ever die. So I just kind of want to gauge where your interest is with Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee taking on Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs. Yeah, lately it's been weird, and maybe it's the way they've been presented, but I've been actually more focused on Powerhouse Hobbs. I think because before the AEW show, Kenny and I were just talking a little bit about kind of the card and everything, and does AEW do enough with their mid-card guys, because now we see such a rash of injuries. And Kenny had said, is Powerhouse Hobbs a guy that you would pay to see, or is he a guy that is worth box office? And I said, you know what? AEW, if they want to start elevating stars, that's a guy that just has that look. What a great name, Powerhouse Hobbs. That's a professional wrestling name. And Ricky Starks is just the consummate pro, battled back from injury. So I was kind of, when they were highlighted, I kind of said to myself, I'm more interested in seeing how this plays out from the perspective of Ricky Starks, because in some weird way, I'm not so sure that they've made Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland feel big enough. And I'm not sure why that is, because you would presume that Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland are like they're not just mid-card guys. They're top talent in regards to size, speed, athleticism, what they can do in the ring. But it's a slow build for them. So knowing that Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks are potentially going to enter a feud, I'm interested. But I'm definitely interested to see who's going to go over, because both teams kind of need it at this point in time to kind of take that next step up the rung. And if it's going to be Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, then you potentially can kick them off. But it's been weird, because Keith Lee debuted to a massive ovation, and now he's kind of been thrown into a tag team. Kind of sounds WWE-esque to me. Well, I'll say this. Keith Lee, out of all the guys that you named, when we were there at LCA, the ovation for him was absolutely fantastic. Like, the roof blew off for him. Swerve Strickland didn't quite get to the level that it got for Keith Lee. It was still very good, but not on the level of Keith Lee. If on the scale of 1 to 10, Keith Lee is the 10. I'd say Swerve Strickland's like the 8. And then it's really interesting because Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks are probably somewhere right around 5 or 6. And I'll be honest with you. I think Powerhouse Hobbs is a guy who could have all the tools. I feel like he's a little rough around the edges, but just needs to be refined a little bit. Ricky Starks has a look, has a persona, has the charisma. He can move in the ring. Ricky Starks is good. It's just getting him to that next level. Powerhouse Hobbs, I feel like, is kind of in that mode where you're with Ricky Starks for a reason. We really got to pull that personality out of you, and we really got to shave off some of these rough spurs around the edges and get you really kind of refined here. And that's kind of where they're at. I think out of these two groups, I think Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs probably needs this win a little bit more. And I think that's how you can set up splitting up Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee and have them do their own thing. Because we're setting up for a feud between those two guys. But it'll be interesting to see how this kind of plays out. I just wanted to touch base with you to kind of see where you were at with this, because to me, it kind of felt like, okay, we left this, we forgot this, we moved on from this, but now we're coming back to it. And then I was like, well, we never actually had a conclusion to it. It seemed like it kind of got put on the back burner because we had Forbidden Door coming up. So I just wanted to touch base and kind of see where you were at, check in with you. Now, Max Caster and the Gun Club beat the New Japan Dojo. Before the match ended, Austin Gunn and Colton, before the match even started, Austin Gunn and Colton ended up running to the back to find Danhausen. Billy Gunn and Matt Caster end up essentially winning a handicap match. This plays into what ends up coming on Dynamite. On Dynamite, we end up having the Gun Club taking on Danhausen and FTR. And you start to see the breakup of the Gun Club on Dynamite. We don't really talk about that on our show, but if you watch Dynamite, you know exactly what happens. Jericho, Guevara, and Suzuki end up defeating Eddie Kingston, Yuta, and Umio. I thought that was a really good match. Surprised by that ending. Neither one of us had that pick to go that way. Now, FTR ends up winning the New Japan tag belts and the ROH tag belts over Roppongi Vice and United Empire. This was a hell of a match. This was absolutely fantastic. During the match, I believe it was Dax who goes down with a shoulder injury, ends up separating his shoulder. He ends up, in the moment it happens, everybody knows. Everybody's like, oh no, that's not good. He ends up going to the back, gets it wrapped up, gets it kind of put back into place, and then comes back out and finishes the match. I think that helped add to this match. What did you think of this match? Because I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Top guys, baby, all the way around in the ring. It was great. And give credit to the other teams as well. They went in there and they worked hard. They put on a show, and it was quality tag team wrestling at its finest. And I think everybody held their own. FTR, man, how did WWE miss the boat on them? I don't understand. These guys are over. It just seems like, in a weird way, they're getting more over with every match that they're in. And I think that it just goes to show you, when you put together quality matches, good in-ring psychology, it has the opportunity to pay off real big. And I think it was highlighted by what we saw at LCA, because they got a great pop, and I was excited to see them. I thought it was a highlight. And I don't know, it's the music. Their theme song is like simple yet effective. Like it's FTR. It's top guys.
It's super 80s retro, and it is fantastic.
Yes.
Their jackets are great. Their look is great. Their music is fantastic. The way they wrestle in the ring is great. On Twitter, I believe it was Dax who ended up tweeting out, "Just think, a year ago at this time, I was shaving your back." And it was Cash ends up responding and was like, "Actually, I was shaving yours." So like it's just like throwing shade at WWE, because that's what WWE had them doing. They were wrapped up in that 24/7 title. They weren't really utilized as a good tag team. It's unreal. I'm waiting for these guys to have every single belt. I thought for sure at this point they would have the AEW championships to go along with all of the gold that they have. But it's really interesting to see these guys work and to see these guys go, because they do put together hell of a match every time they're out there. Thought it was absolutely great.
Which is real. When you were saying that, I think we touched on it. or either in side conversations or on the podcast. If Vince McMahon looked at those two guys and says, well, you guys are just wrestlers, I can't market you. Well, in the end, it either means that you've become a sellout to the profit, or you've gone so far away from the tenet that your dad started. It's like, okay, I understand you're this big global company and you want to make $1 and you want to be this big entertainment company. You want to be fun. You want to be lighthearted. You want to have these wrestlers throw pies in their face. But at the core of it all, it should be professional wrestling. It should be, who are the guys that can go in the ring, tell a story, and get people to like them. Now, if you can sprinkle in the entertainment and find ways to do it periodically, I think it hits more of a home run. Who are the most revered wrestlers? I know there's an equal basis to say Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, but in the battle between those that are over in entertainment versus those that wrestle, I feel like the hardcore base would prefer those that can get in the ring and execute moves. Now, if you can make them a little more entertaining, that's great. But for Vince to just look at those guys and the company and say, hey, let's have them shave each other's backs and become a parody act, that's really bad, because these guys are, in essence, it should have sparked back to him the Four Horsemen, Tully and Arn Anderson. How do you not harken back to the classic age of tag team wrestling when you look at those guys? Why are they over? And when you consistently do that kind of shit, and you maybe now are looking to recruit internet sensations, you might be dividing the people that you're intended to watch your company. So FTR, man, kudos to them for picking up the ball and getting themselves over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it kind of speaks to a mindset with both companies, right? So AEW, like they have no problem putting on great tag team matches. They value tag team matching. Yeah, exactly. And WWE doesn't really value tag team matches. They more value the individual. They more value the individual star and who they can make. The whole purpose for a tag team in WWE is so we can find out who's a bigger star than the other person, and then have you guys break up. That's what WWE does with their tag teams.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely bananas to me. But you're right. Kudos to those guys for getting themselves over and believing in themselves and taking their ball and going where they're actually respected. So it's absolutely fantastic. Now, Pac ends up winning the All-Atlantic title over Miro, Malachi Black, and Clark Connors. You were pretty upset about this. When we were watching this, we were messaging back and forth. You were pretty pissed. Why were you so upset that Pac won this match?
Now, if you recall last week's podcast, we both said, okay, if our guy is wrong, then we will understand it's going to be Pac. And so I said it. I prefaced it. I said, I know that I'm supposed to pick Pac, but I'm picking Miro because that's who I want to win. Why? Because, again, you have a guy that you brought over from WWE, this monster, this returning dude. Now, is Pac the more deserving wrestler? Did he perform better? Yes, obviously. Is he a guy that I would say is not worthy of being the champion? Absolutely not. He kind of embodies everything you would want, but so does Miro. And at this point in time, it's kind of like the idea of at what point do you make Miro feel important? And maybe it's an unfair characterization to keep bringing up WWE, but this is what WWE did. They kept elevating Miro to U.S. champion, and then he'd lose and then go away and then come back up with another feud you get interested in. He never took that next leap. And so with Miro, I'm like, okay, this is a mid to upper tier guy that you could even make world champion in a way that also can be entertaining and can be very much a product of what you can do when you build a character. But eventually speaking, when he gets in these big matches, he doesn't get over. I'm like, dude, if you put Miro as the champion and you bring him out on Wednesday, but dude, he's going to get over it. He could do a promo. He could do a lot of different things. But in the end, it's Pac, and it's great, but he's been there before. He's done that. He's been at the top. He's been highlighted in a lot of really great feuds. I just want to see now, for me, Miro take that next step. I want him to have the mantle because he is just a powerhouse, can move, is agile. He has all the tools for the promos, and you've not even tapped into the resource that potentially could take him to the next step, which is his wife. So I just was like, oh. And like I said, it was a great match. It very much everything that it needed to deliver. I just wanted Miro to win because I think he's the guy that can fill the gap with all these other guys. He's on par with me, with Cesaro, with Claudio, with however you want to describe him. I think Miro is somebody that, for some reason, has reached a spot, but just can't get to the next spot. And I think it's about time because there's money there. And I'm just not sure why you would go with Pac at this point in time. Even if you wanted to have Miro win it and Pac chase it, I thought that would have been money for the summer.
Do you think that maybe with Miro, obviously just coming back from an injury, has only really been back for what? Maybe, I don't even want to say he's been back for a full month, maybe a full month. Do you think maybe that kind of plays a bit of a part in it? Because he's just getting back, let's get you kind of built back up. You can be the guy who takes the belt off of Pac, or even he can be the guy who goes back after the TNT championship, because I think we all kind of agree the TNT championship really feels like it has kind of fallen from where it was at. At one point, I felt like it was a pretty prestigious title. Now I just kind of feel like it's a prop. So
and with Miro, isn't it crazy? He's one of the ones already that's got a gimmick change.
Yeah.
So he was the best man, the one. Now he's the chosen one with God. And it's like, you don't have to be this sophisticated with Miro. He's a bad motherfucker. Let him talk. Let him go in there and destroy people and let him handle his business. What's wrong with the basic tough guy? Whatever this is okay, but it just seems like something that needs to be also fine-tuned. So I understand your premise that Pac is maybe the most deserving at this point in time. So I'm hoping that Miro can be the guy that takes it off of him next. He needs it. I mean, what was the point of bringing him over if you're not going to make some of these guys just a little bit better? And I think that was the crux of my conversation with Kenny was you have such a deep roster at AEW that it just doesn't feel like they're getting utilized at that point where you are ready to say Miro, Pac, Aleister Black. All those guys in some way, shape, or form could be way higher than what they are. And to see it, I think, just stamped it the beginning of the seeds of my formulation that I'm not happy with the mid-card of AEW. And the prime example is what's going on with Miro.
Totally get it. And again, when we kind of did our picks, it felt like it could have went one of three ways, and it didn't go either way that me and you picked. But congrats to Pac on winning the All-Atlantic title. Now, Dudes with Attitudes end up defeating the Bullet Club. Thunder Rosa ends up retaining over Toni Storm in what was the shortest match on the card. A little bit weird again. Thunder Rosa, I don't feel like they are elevating her with her championship as much as they probably should or could. Now, Will Ospreay beats Orange Cassidy. Shibata comes out to make the save. This match had everything. This match could have been, probably should have been, maybe it is the best match on the Absolute card. Like, I thought this was outstanding. The Will Ospreay, Orange Cassidy back and forth was so damn good. Them mocking each other was absolutely fantastic during the match. Will Ospreay, Orange Cassidy, they're so fluid in the ring. It's like watching wet noodles that can pull off moves, because these guys can just kind of conform and flop one way, flop the other way, and then just pull out some strength move out of a spot where you're like, how did he do that? And it just kind of makes your mind just explode, and you're like, what the heck's going on? And then Shibata comes out as they are just picking apart Orange Cassidy, and basically gets in Will Ospreay's face. And I think that's a really awesome moment, because Shibata basically, 2 years ago, we talked about it on this podcast. 2 years ago, Shibata ended up having a headbutt situation, ends up having a massive brain contusion. They have to take him to the hospital. They have to crack his skull so his brain can kind of expand a little bit. He lost a lot of motor function, wasn't ever supposed to be able to wrestle again. They never thought that doctors would ever clear him to wrestle again. Ends up going to the New Japan Dojo, and now he was teaching. It looks like Shibata is coming back and is going to wrestle, and it looks like he has his sights set on Will Ospreay. So a really special moment if you know anything about New Japan. I think this moment falls a little bit flat for people who don't know anything about New Japan. They're kind of like, okay, well, who's this Asian guy coming out? Well, Shibata's a big deal in New Japan, and it was a really special moment. I thought this whole match was absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. What did you think?
Special all the way around, yeah. And it's oftentimes when you have expectations, sometimes you're let down. In no way, shape, or form did this match under-deliver. It was all that it was great. I thought the best moment was when Will Ospreay reached into Orange Cassidy's pocket and pulled out the middle finger. It was classic entertainment.
It was really good.
It was really entertaining. And, man, with Will Ospreay, you just know that guy has world championship caliber. And it was great to have him highlighted. I felt like the match itself delivered. Orange Cassidy, give him credit. He makes it look easy when he can turn on and turn off his speeds and psychology. So you have to appreciate the guy that what he's trying to do is to live the gimmick and to be somebody that's like, okay, whatever, wherever, and he can pick it up at any pace and do what he's got to do with his hands in his pockets. And I thought that Will Ospreay played off of that pretty well in the beginning stages of the match. And yes, I thought the moment was special. And I just felt like we have to also take a moment and give credit to the crowd. They were smart. They knew what was going on. And throughout the matches, they kept their energy right at the right times. There were no missteps. And a lot of times a smart crowd definitely can appeal to a match. And I think that the crowds of Chicago and Detroit and the Midwest give AEW really lends credence to a show because they were into it. The Thunder Rosa match, it's at no point, I mean, we thought, you and I, Tony Storm would win. At no point did you really kind of actually believe it at that point because Tony Storm needed to deliver a lot more in that matchup in regards to like power moves. Like, I'm going to destroy this lady. Like, it's a championship opportunity. And it kind of came off like a match that was just put on TV with Thunder Rosa going to win. It was good for what it was, but not good enough. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, Will Ospreay delivered a quality matchup. So I was left like, man, I think the universal thought was, man, is there any way to keep Will Ospreay in AEW?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be fantastic if you could. If this working partnership between New Japan and AEW continues, I think it'll be fantastic to see wrestlers coming and going. I think New Japan was at its peak when they had the crossover with Ring of Honor. Yep. And you were exposed to more New Japan wrestling. You had guys, that's how you learned about Kenny Omega. That was how you learned about the Bullet Club, and you learned about everybody inside the Bullet Club that wasn't in Ring of Honor. So I think if this working relationship continues to proceed, and we're going to have another one of these, and it sounds like we're going to have another one of these, you'll see more Will Ospreay on AEW television, and you'll see some of AEW guys going over to Japan as long as their COVID restrictions loosen up a little bit. All right, now we have Claudio Castagnoli defeating Zack Sabre Jr. Really good match. Jay White ends up retaining over Okada, Hangman Page, and Adam Cole. Now, in this match, Adam Cole appears to eat a drop kick from Okada and was basically out on his feet. He essentially collapsed to the mat, and this is where Jay White ends up pinning him. The finish of this match was really, really wonky. Did that lessen this match for you at all? Because the way this sets up is you have Okada deliver a kick to Adam Cole. Adam Cole sells the kick. You're not like, okay, nothing's really wrong here. He then picks him up to do the Rainmaker, and what ends up happening is Adam Cole ends up falling to his knees. And it was a little bit kind of a scary moment. You weren't really sure if Adam Cole was selling to get out of the move or if he was legitimately hurt. And then what happens is you have Jay White come in and hit a finishing move on Okada, throws him out of the ring, and then he just grabs Adam Cole and pins him. So at some point it was discussed that Adam Cole was hurt and that this is kind of how we have to do this. It was a really wonky finish to what was a really good match. Did that take away from the match for you at all? Yes,
and here's why. I know it's hard in the very moment to improvise when a change is made. I thought that they sold Okada having failed multiple Rainmakers as really well. The match itself was fine and exactly right. You had all the competitors in there that were believable. They all got their shit in and it was good. Now at the end, all you have to do is, okay, Adam Cole is hurt. You just push him to the side. I know you want to be sensitive, but all you have to do then is quickly change. I know you maybe want to protect Okada, but Jay White, all he's got to do is do the finishing move on the guy he does it on and pin him. That's all you have to do. If it intentionally was that Adam Cole was going to be the one to take the pin because he's going to be out for a while, I get it. but something happened and he can't do it. So you got to change it up. You got to think on the fly, and you say, okay, it doesn't make any sense for Jay White to do a finishing move on Okada and then go and pin Adam Cole. I get it. He's hurt. You can play it off at wrestling, but it would have been more impactful if you just would have had Jay White pin Okada. I think that just elevates Jay White, and you also have something in the future for Okada to stew on when he goes back to New Japan. So it does. And then here's the silly part. That was just a misstep, I think, in the moment, and sometimes maybe the lack of production will hurt. I didn't need the commentators to say, well, that was anticlimactic. No, you needed to actually, that was what you needed to do. That's needed to be, you needed that moment to be entertainment where you go, oh my God, I can't believe the wherewithal and the genius of Jay White to recognize that Adam Cole was not with it. What a genius Jay White is. This is what makes him the greatest performer of all time. He actually finished Okada and put him in a move and then took advantage of a prone Adam Cole. This is what makes Jay White the greatest. And it was just like, well, there was a finish and that was anticlimactic. You don't do that because that's what we're all thinking. You had to sell something.
Yeah, with AEW, I think sometimes their commentary it needs to just kind of be revised. Like, this is the thing. With Vince is always in your ear in WWE. That's why the commentary is generally so damn good. And everybody knows their role. Their role is to, 1, get over the match, 2, get everybody in the match over. And that's one of those moments where you're absolutely right. You come in and you say, that is the genius of what Jay White is. Realizing that Adam Cole, and make it like he's a dirty bastard as well. Realizing that Adam Cole is hurt, and all he has to do is remove Okada from the situation to then go and pin his injured friend. Because the Young Bucks came out, and you had medical staff attending to Adam Cole. It sets up perfectly for something that when Adam Cole is healthy enough to come back, you can build off of that.
You got Adam Cole and Jay White.
You just kind of put him over as wet newspaper.
Exactly. Jay White, he's even willing to take down his friends for the great cause of the IWGP title. This is what makes him the greatest in the world. Look at that. And, that's where the art of commentary needs to take you away from what you're thinking. We all thought it was like, that didn't look right. So you have to sell it and divert it and deflect what people are thinking to actually add the realm of, oh my God, he didn't even check on his friend. What kind of cold-hearted bastard would not even check on his friend? That move was devastating. And he could have had a concussion. He could be out. His career could be over. And Jay White just took advantage. You gotta sell the idea that something different is going on, even though everybody knew something fucked up just happened within 5 seconds. So I thought that left it to the point where it was underwhelming.
All right, so we end up coming to our main event. John Moxley defeats Tanahashi. I don't think this surprises anybody. John Moxley is now your interim AEW champion. I think what was a little bit of a surprise is at the end, they're basically congratulating each other and thanking each other for a fantastic match, and you have the JAS come out and attack them.
Yep.
And when this happened, I was like, this is totally not needed. And the longer it went on, the more I was like, this is definitely not needed. And then you had Eddie Kingston come out, and you had Claudio come out. I want to call him Cesaro. You had Claudio come out. And at that moment, all of a sudden, I was now re-intrigued by it. So initially, I hated it. And then at the very end, I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. What did you think about the very ending of this match when the JSA came out and attacked John Moxley and Tanahashi? Because I thought I don't think you needed it to build towards blood and guts. I didn't think that was necessary. But I thought the interaction between Eddie Kingston and Claudio made it, because what ended up happening after that was I was like, okay, now I'm interested. Now I had to go do some research because I didn't watch a lot of Shikara wrestling. I didn't watch a lot of Eddie Kingston's matches when he was on the Indies, and I didn't watch a lot of Claudio's matches when he was on the Indies as well. So I had to go back and I had to do some research, and I had to get reintroduced to where this feud and this distrust and this dislike is coming from. And that was really cool for me. Like, me being a wrestling nerd, it was really cool for me because I got reintroduced to some stuff that I had missed, and I really, really enjoyed that. But I think for the average AEW fan, for people who don't know what took place with those guys, I don't think this worked. I don't think this really helped get anything over. I don't think it helped sell anything for Blood and Guts. And then when you get to Blood and Guts, we're going to talk about it. those two guys were dapping each other up left and right. At the very end, there was a little bit of consternation between them, but they seemed like they were, for the most part, on the same page. Whereas going into it, it helped sell that they were totally not on the same page. So I don't know if that was needed, and I don't think that was necessary. I think you could have closed the show in a different manner, and it would have been better. What did you think about the way the show went off the air?
Yeah, I know you wanted to set up Dynamite. I think you could have just ended it with Jon Moxley celebrating Tanahashi. It was a good match, good enough to do what you got to do, and you go from there. So I agree with you 100%. It's a little bit overbooking, and I understand the purpose of it, and you want to continue the action. You want to have Jericho, interrupt and be part of the story. But in the end, it takes away from the moment of the two guys that were in the ring doing their thing. And I thought it should have ended with the guys in the main event and not so fast, quickly. I think that's where sometimes companies do not take advantage of what they call the digital exclusive content, where you could have gone off the air and then kept filming for the crowd there in Chicago, and then you open Dynamite with, oh my God, after Forbidden Door, one of the great pay-per-views, look what happened. Or you release it Monday in a online clip where you say, Jericho is such a selfish, greedy bastard, he couldn't even wait for Dynamite. He wants to get after Jon Moxley before Blood and Guts and show it there. I didn't think he needed it at the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I just don't think it did. I don't think it served its purpose, right? Like, right. It kind of took away from a really special moment. As far as the picks go and the selections go, I got 7 out of 6. You got I got 7 picks right. You got 6 picks right. We both got the mystery opponent for Zack Sabre Jr., so we each get a bonus point for that. I increased my lead by 1. It's now 8.5 to 4.5. This whole pay-per-view, all of this that we just gave you, ends up building to what took place on Wednesday night and what took place on Friday night. We got to the arena approximately about the same time. I did a lap around the arena to kind of check everything out. I wanted to see if there was anything cool as far as merch goes to buy. I wanted to kind of see what they did for the crowd. It was a really rocking crowd. It was that crowd was invested. I've seen a couple little kids with their faces painted up like Danhausen. I've seen a couple guys with their faces painted up like Sting. It was really, really cool. I thought Blood and Guts was absolutely fantastic. I thought the way they had the arena laid out was great. I thought it was a spectacular, it's not a pay-per-view. It's just a spectacular television event. I thought it was really, really great. The only issue I tend to have with matches like what we got with Blood and Guts, and you were right, Blood and Guts was worth the price of admission by itself, is there's generally so much going on. You end up missing stuff. I ended up having to go back and rewatch Dynamite because I had missed certain things. And when we were watching it in the stands, I was like, okay, that's cool. That doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Now we were facing the camera side, and so the camera was basically shooting at us. So we were across from the camera. So there were things that were done that we didn't get to see because the wrestlers' backs were to us, and it was for the camera. And in the Blood and Guts match specifically, there was so much going on that you ended up getting pulled in different directions. Like you're focusing on what's going on with Chris Jericho and what's going on with Jon Moxley, and then over here in the corner you got Santana doing something, and you're just like, what the hell is going on here? And like you end up just missing stuff. So going back and rewatching it was really a treat for me because I seen stuff that I had completely missed the first time around. What was your reaction to Blood and Guts and Rampage and just taking it all in live? Because I thought they did a really good job hyping up the crowd, getting everybody into it, basically getting you pumped up for this show. Now, I know me and you do have some issues with Rampage, and we're going to talk about that. And I think you fixed Rampage. I think you figured out a way to make Rampage much, much better. But overall, I thought Blood and Guts, Rampage, I thought our first AEW event was absolutely fantastic. Scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give it a 8.5, 9.
Yeah, it was amazing. I thought that the show was well worth it, and man, I think we could have did without the Hour of Dark. I just was not a fan of it. It was 5-minute matches, not much hype to it.
You have to understand that is something that they sell to their fan base on their YouTube channel. So they're getting content is what that is. I get what you're saying, but they're getting content for their YouTube channel.
Do you ever watch it?
No.
No, exactly. Exactly. I never watch it at all. So I look at it and I say, I don't need it. So I would say in the future, what you would do is you would put Rampage first. Yep. Because when you saw what happened on Rampage with the Battle Royal, you build people up and then you can bring them down with that women's match, Toni Storm. Because what we did was we left before the main event. We heard Mark Henry say, it's time for the main events. But we were walking out the door. You could have had that. Then you have a little bit of a 10-minute lull. If you can time it right, or you start it, 7 to 7:55. You get on the air and boom. And then you end with Blood and Guts. How are you supposed to bring the crowd back for a Battle Royal after Blood and Guts? It made no sense because Tony Khan comes out and is like, stay hot for the crowd. Stay hot. It's like, it's impossible to stay hot.
It really was. After the Blood and Guts match, I was talking to Kenny on Friday, and it was Friday, and we were still both pretty exhausted from Wednesday night. Like, that Blood and Guts match took a lot out of us just watching it, right? And the thing that wasn't accounted for was there was about 30 to maybe 40 minutes in between Dynamite going off the air and the setup for Rampage, because you had the cage, you had to redo the entire ring, you had to clean everything up because of all the blood. That really brought the crowd down. And then you want the crowd to get hyped again for Rampage, and now it's already going on 11 o'clock. And I'm in bed by 9:30 every night. I'm usually asleep by 10. So, it's already way past my bedtime. And I know I sound like an old man here. I was disappointed I had to leave. I ended up leaving early because I just couldn't do it because I had to get up so early the next day. But it was the way the two shows are paced and set up I just don't think it's conducive for Rampage, for your live television programming. I think if you do what you are saying, right, where you have Rampage filmed first as the crowd's kind of trickling in, you end up getting the crowd, you end up building slowly, right? You get the crowd hot, and you end up timing it up to where you're done taping your Rampage approximately 5 to 10 minutes prior to Dynamite going live on air. I think is absolutely fantastic, because now the crowd gets to get built up, they get to come back down, and then you have Dynamite start, and you get to get built right back up again. You can't film a show like Rampage after you just given somebody blood and guts. After you just hit the ball out of the park and you gave us a 12.5, you can't expect us to get hyped for what is now maybe a 7, and that's me being generous and being kind. Do you know what I'm saying? It just doesn't work. And by the end of the show, like you said, you're now pushing midnight. Like that is a lot of wrestling, right? We got there at 6, and it's now going on midnight. At 6 hours we've been sitting in our seats. That's a lot of wrestling, man. That is really hard to sit through for 6 hours, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's just tough for an attention span to go 4.5 hours at a television taping.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a constant battle of wills here. And I like what you said, where you put Rampage in the beginning, you then film Dynamite, and then, you know what, at the end, if you want to make it special for the crowd, give them dark at the very, very end. Give them dark at the very, very end. You know, WWE does this where they will usually give you an encore match at the very, very end of the show. So if you hang around after the show goes off air, you'll get something. You'll get some type of programming. Give them dark then if you want to. And you can film a couple quick matches. You can see a couple of things. Will it be as fulfilling as what you just got with the previous 3.5, 4 hours of wrestling that you got? No. But you know what? It's something extra that you're giving the crowd. The crowd basically showed up for Dynamite. We got Rampage as a bonus. Overall, I thought it was a really well done show. But looking at Rampage, and this is something you and I talk about on this program often, Rampage always seems to suffer. It never really seems like Rampage hits like Dynamite did. Like, Dynamite crushes it, and we both love Dynamite. Rampage is always a show where I have to convince myself to watch it, and I think you generally watch it on fast forward. It is a tough show for us to have to sit through, and it's only an hour. it shouldn't be that hard, but the crowd is usually so flat. It really takes you out of the match. You had a Young Bucks match on this program, and it was good, but it didn't get hyped. It didn't, like, when they came out, the crowd was like done. They had nothing left to give. And then you still have a main event after that. Like, that crowd was totally zapped. And I don't care how much Tony Khan's screaming at everybody in between breaks, it's not going to do anything. By the way, he looks like he is a homeless college student who is basically tweaked out on Adderall. Like, he just comes out and he like looks like he's wearing sweatpants and a ratty long sleeve t-shirt, and he's just yelling a whole lot. I was talking to Kenny about it. I was like, man, he just looks like he is a homeless high school student. What is going on here? He was like, yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? And I was like, yeah, nuts. Anyways, I think the big thing coming out of both these shows, besides us getting a fantastic Blood and Guts, I think sets up for Eddie Kingston, Cesaro, Eddie Kingston to continue his feud with Chris Jericho, as Eddie Kingston was not the one to get Chris Jericho to tap. He had him in the plum stretch, and Cesaro had Numbnuts from 2.0 in the sharpshooter, and the Numbnuts in the 2.0 from 2.0 had ended up tapping before Chris Jericho did. So that led to a little bit of back and forth between Cesaro and Eddie Kingston. Overall, I thought Dynamite was fantastic. I thought Rampage was good, but Brody King is the guy who is challenging Jon Moxley next.
Brody King!
I thought they did a really good job of making him look strong in that Battle Royal.
Yes.
But is he the right guy to be next to challenge Jon Moxley?
I think it's unique, and that's what you wanted to establish, is somebody new, because at this point in time, you got a lot of stars that are out, and you got some stars that are involved in some other feuds. So Brody King, I think, got, in regards to after the fact, a lot of good reaction online for the fact that he won the Battle Royal. I think people would have popped for Darby Allin, but at the same time, somebody new that was unexpected is the whole kind of premise of the Royal Rampage, which is not the same as the Royal Rumble, to let everybody know. It's good. It's a completely unique idea, and one founded by the one hyped up Tony Khan.
Yeah.
Because it's such a special.
He told you about it. He told you about how it was his idea at least 4 times.
It's exactly. What a great, wonderful idea, the Royal Rampage. And
as he said, it's a great, wonderful idea that I had.
Exactly. I had this great idea, and it's special for you guys. So a countdown of wrestlers with an over-the-top Battle Royal with 2 rings. It's something revolutionary. And, I thought that was really funny at the highest levels. But overall, the experience was great. It was a good time. It was something that, even though the biggest of the big stars were not available because of injury or, per se not in the ring, I think when you sell Blood and Guts, it just highlighted by what you had there, and it was perfect. And it was a great night, and it well anticipated. It was fun. And like I said, Sammy Guevara deserves a spot. It sucked for Santana to blow out his knee and to kind of just now be a non-factor.
We didn't even talk about that, but we're going to cover that in news and notes. But yeah you're absolutely right.
It just sucked because you're like, what's going on? And obviously, it felt like he was trapped in there because the match was going on, but it stinks for him. But all in all, to see the Jon Moxley group and everybody on top of the ring with the official to end the show with Claudio.
Dude, did you see how terrified some of those guys were?
Yeah, it's like, it's to climb a cage is scary, and that's why I got a lot of the videos and pictures, because it's just not something you see every day with people doing moves and wrestling on top of a cage. It's great that Jim Ross called Claudio Cesaro. I think that's kind of now a funny bit where does Jim Ross?
Oh, did you hear when Ruby Soho came out? They called her Ruby Riot.
Oh, did they? No, I didn't catch that. See, so they're like such in the moment. They keep messing it up. It was an A+ experience. I had a good time. I look forward to a pay-per-view when they come to town and bring that. So AEW had themselves a great week. Took up 50 minutes of our time. That's so awesome. And I could do another 3 hours about all the stuff that could have happened in regards to AEW. But man, it was a good week for them. And I'm looking forward to the future with what they got going on this summer.
Yeah, I thought it was really spectacular. Everything they did, well-rounded. It was a really good week for AEW. Let's get into WWE real quick. We still have to give our Money in the Bank predictions. So John Cena returned. It's been hyped for weeks, and it felt like a wet fart to me. It felt really, really like a whole lot of nothing took place. You had John Cena come out and basically cut a promo and saying, I'm coming back, but I don't know when. And that was what you got.
That
what
was
did you
it.
think of John Cena's return?
But, like, I understand you build it as, hey, it's John Cena's 20th. Let's let him get in camera with the likes of, Seth Rollins, with Becky Lynch, passing by other wrestlers, with, Ezekiel, Elias's younger brother. You have a fun situation there. But I think
I like how you refer to him as Elias's younger brother.
It's Ezekiel, Elias's younger brother. And I think you and I both would have wanted, you just go out there, John Cena hypes up the crowd. I thank you guys. You guys have meant the world to me. And then Theory comes out and cuts the promo in the ring. I mean, what the fuck? Sometimes the keep it simple model of, we know what we want to see, now deliver it. That's it. Having John Cena talk to him backstage felt less than what it needed to have. Like, I mean, this is like Wrestling 101, and you've done it like a million times. John Cena gets up there, gets the crowd. You could have even lied and said, I'm only here for one reason, and I want to be the 17-time world champion because I'm still the best. I'm coming back after 9 months off, and there's nothing he could have kind of started to cut a little bit of a heel promo. There's nothing here. Shit on the wrestlers a little bit. There's nothing here that indicates I'd watch. I don't even watch this anymore. And comes back and, then kind of brings it back a little bit, takes the crowd on a little journey. And he's like, you guys make me special and this is great, blah, 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 blah. And then Theory comes out with McMahon. I mean, you've had McMahon come out at all times. You could have said, what a great way to bridge the past to the future. You could have said, McMahon comes out and says, man, when I looked at the future of wrestling, I saw John Cena. Boy, was I wrong. This is the future. My hand-picked guy, Theory. And you could get so much heel heat, and then Theory comes out and just cuts a scathing promo that lets him know that, Cena, you're in the past and you are never was, and bring up some inside shit about, the part of wrestling that makes me special is the fact I can do more than 5 moves. And, shit like that, and bring it to some shit talking, but it's a slow build, and they made it more corny and celebratory. At that time, we wanted some wrestling, some pro wrestling, not some sports entertainment, and that's where it fell flat.
Yeah, I think the way you have it set up, much more interesting and much better than what we ended up getting.
I think, you know what, dude, it'd be great if Theory makes a shirt called 5 Moves of Doom. and where, like, it would be great. He comes out and Cena looks at him and goes, what's that? He goes, I don't know, I'm just repping the guy that's considered the best guy of all time. And he only does 5 moves. And then what Theory could do is in a match, he could just have a match with a jobber and just go through 6 moves of wrestling, like leg drop, head thing, do 6 moves right there and say, stop the match in 6. He goes, within 4 minutes, I just did 6 moves, which is more than you ever got with that bum John Cena. And then go back and pin the guy in 2 minutes, and you can make it a whole bit. I mean, you have to have some new ways of making things interesting, not just, hey, John, good to see you. Hey, and then just everybody does their gimmick. It fell flat, and it wasn't good enough. Not up to the top guy standard.
Yeah, didn't like it, and I'm a huge John Cena fan, and to me it was absolutely awful. Now, what we did get, I guess, to build towards Money in the Bank, because this, again, Raw's go-home show, I didn't think it was a great go-home show, but Becky Lynch is the final woman to qualify for Money in the Bank. Was this the right move? I think she's probably the most lethal competitor in this match. Like, when you look at everybody, like, you look at kind of their stats, and you look at their stories, is this the right move to put her in this match? I think it would have been really interesting. I think you could have did maybe a better story if she loses this and she continues this downward spiral where she's just a complete hot mess. At some point, they have to turn Becky Lynch face. They can't have her being heel because she's an awful heel. And she's just not over. The crowd wants to cheer her, and she's basically calling the crowd stupid. It just doesn't work. But I think her spiraling down and out of control might have been more of an interesting story arc to take her on. She misses Money in the Bank. She doesn't qualify, and she doesn't know what to do with herself at this point. And then she has to look internally and figure something out, and maybe she becomes a baby face again. I'm not sure. It was an idea I had because I get why you put her in Money in the Bank, and I get why she's the final woman, but I feel like you could do more of a better story, a longer story, and build her out and add to her character if you went a different direction. So was it the right move to put her in the Money in the Bank match?
Yeah, I'm not terribly opposed to it. Was there anybody else you would have thought to put in besides her if it's not her? Because I agree with you. you could have told a different story, but at this point in time, you need more cachet for an event that you want to have people pay attention to with the women, so you wanted to have as many top women as possible. Was there anybody else under the radar that could have been in there that would have been believable?
You know,
that's the problem too.
Yeah, that becomes the issue, right? Is because the women's division's not absolutely great. I mean, I guess you could have put Dewdrop in there, and she could have been the heavy heater in this match. It's usually good to have a heavy heater. I was reading an article on ESPN. It was about the creation of Money in the Bank, and of course Chris Jericho helped create it. So I was reading it because I love Chris Jericho, my favorite wrestler of all time. But in the very first match, Kane was in that very first match, and he was the big guy. He was the heavy heat. You sometimes add that heavy heat because that guy can totally dominate all the smaller wrestlers. And Dewdrop is a big girl, and Asuka's kind of small. Alexa Bliss is slight. Liv Morgan is slight. Raquel Rodriguez, she's bigger, like she's taller, but she's still not as thick as Dewdrop is. Lacey Evans, kind of muscular. Shotzi is a slighter wrestler as well. So you could have a heavy heater. I'd probably go Dewdrop if I had to pick one. But I get what you're saying, and I get how she adds to the star power of that match. So that's why it makes sense. Just wondering what you thought about it. Now, I really feel like WWE overcomplicates everything. So on SmackDown, we start with a battle royal, and it's implied that the winner will get the final Money in the Bank spot. And I thought it was really weird because you have the guys who are already in the Money in the Bank match competing in this, along with four other guys who aren't in that match. It didn't make any sense to me, but once it got down to, I believe it was Drew McIntyre, it was Sheamus, it was Sami Zayn, and it was Baron Corbin. I was like, all right, Baron Corbin's winning this. So you kind of take the surprise out of it. I was like, this is just absolutely stupid. You end up cutting to the back a little bit later on, and then the four guys are arguing, and it's Madcap Moss, Baron Corbin, Miz, and it was, I can't remember the fourth guy off the top of my head right now. Anyways, they're in the back arguing, and then Adam Pearce sets a fatal four-way match with the winner to go on to Money in the Bank. Well, I just thought that we had Baron Corbin win this. Why are we doing this again? Didn't make any sense. In the end, Madcap Moss ends up winning it, and I was left scratching my head, and I was really frustrated that this is what SmackDown gave us. What did you think about how they went about determining that final entrant into Money in the Bank for the men's match? Did it make sense to you? Because it felt like it was overly complicated.
Yeah, that was the best word I put. It was like not simplistic. And even though, you have Madcap Moss, and do you think maybe in our preview we'll see potentially about him maybe being the guy that cashes it and gets it? But in the end, I think you have a field that's intriguing because you have the guy who many people will believe is the dark horse in Madcap, and then you have the guy who's the favorite, which is Seth Rollins. So I think it sets up for a lot of interesting dynamic when you list off who's in it. So I'm okay with it, even though they got there in a crazy way. I think that I'm okay with the field for the men's Money in the Bank.
Yeah, the field is good. I just felt like you could have went a different way with it. Just have Madcap Moss win that battle royal. Let's call it a day. Give us something else.
Exactly.
It felt overly complicated. Let's get into our predictions. Money in the Bank is Saturday. A little bit weird. They're doing it over a holiday weekend, and they're doing it on a Saturday. But WWE doesn't care because Peacock paid them a bunch of money. So here we go. Your men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn versus Matt Riddle versus Omos versus Sheamus versus Madcap Moss. Who do you have winning this one?
This one's tough, bro. It's very tough.
Difficult.
I have three equal guys that I could see. Riddle, Rollins, and Madcap Moss. Now, the theory of Money in the Bank would potentially indicate Madcap Moss, but I have to not pick him. Not yet, because I don't see him potentially holding the strap. I think the guy that would look cool riding to the ring on a scooter with Money in the Bank is Riddle. It's his time. I think that you continue the feud and you keep it moving. And I think Riddle has to be that guy. Seth Rollins is great, but it could set up a foil where the next match at SummerSlam is Riddle versus Rollins in some way to determine something more or something, that has been created in a feud. I have to go with Riddle.
I don't mind the Riddle pick. Again, kind of in lockstep with you. It's Riddle, Seth Rollins, or Madcap Moss for me. Drew McIntyre's about to face Roman Reigns at the Battle at the Castle. Sami Zayn's not believable. Almost is absolutely awful. The fact that he's in this match frustrates me. Sheamus, I don't really know what the hell they're doing with Sheamus. Madcap Moss, obviously, young up-and-comer. This could be his big break. Riddle's been absolutely fantastic, and I think Seth Rollins has been saying a lot of things on the internet that make it really, really interesting. Yeah. I'm going to go Seth Rollins for this match. I think Seth Rollins wins this, but my number 2 would be Matt Riddle, followed by Madcap Moss. So we're already starting off different. This is good. This is going to be a good show for us, especially with these predictions. Now, the women's Money in the Bank match. You got Becky Lynch, Asuka, Alexa Bliss, Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Lacey Evans, and Shotzi. How do you see this one playing out?
This is the one where maybe they go with, not the top end star. So I'm going to go with, I think the person. Now, my heart would also say Alexa Bliss because she's like the most talented. Yep. But I think you need the next fresh star. So I'm going to go Raquel Rodriguez. Big name, someone that can potentially hold it for a minute and do something. I think you just need something fresh and new.
It's funny because we don't ever talk about this before we do the show. And everything you said is exactly what I was thinking when I was going to give my commentary on this match. Alexa Bliss, I want her to win. I want them to do something with her. I would love for her to be elevated back up into that realm as one of the top female wrestlers because she is that good. But I think you're right. I think Vince likes Raquel Rodriguez. I think Vince sees something with Raquel Rodriguez. I think she'll be the one to win this as well. Now, the SmackDown Women's Championship, I'm just going to put Ronda Rousey for both of us.
Yes.
I don't think Natalya wins this at all.
But give them credit. I like the booby talk. I like the stuff that they've been doing online in terms of Ronda pixelating Natty into being a bimbo. So if you check it out, it's funny. Ronda Rousey, even though she doesn't reply in a timely manner to the beef, she put a picture up with fat lips, eyebrows done, and big fat boobies on Natalya, and it's just funny looking. It's not realistic of a photo, but it was funny to see. So it'll be fun to see Ronda kick her ass. All
right, and for the Raw Women's Championship, I'm just going to put Bianca Belair for both of us. I don't think Carmella's believable at all.
If there was gambling, I'd bet my mortgage and your mortgage that Bianca Belair wins it.
Yes. I would give you 2 months of mortgage for that.
Yes.
All right, WWE Tag Team Championship. The Usos versus the Street Profits. I really like the way they built this on SmackDown. This is the one thing I can say about SmackDown. The build for this feud was absolutely fantastic on Friday night. I thought it was great. I really want to go the Street Profits. But I think the Usos are going to retain because...
Yeah, no doubt. You need more.
It's just where we're at with it. So I'm going to go the Usos on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the blessing over the next few months is we got to identify who the next tag team could be that could challenge. And you need it to be big. You need it to be like a WrestleMania big, where when the Usos drop it, it's like when Demolition or the Hart Foundation lost or when the Rockers lost it. This is good. And I think the Street Profits could be that team, but not now. And definitely not a Money in the Bank.
And I think for the last match, United States Championship, I think we're both going to pick Theory on this one.
Absolutely. Theory, baby. Mr. McMahon's protege.
Dude, it is. This is a kind of an underwhelming card. We got to discuss it. It leaves a lot because it really seems like you can just yep, that guy's going to win. That team's going to win. Really, truly, the one that I'm a little bit hesitant about is the Usos versus the Street Profits. Obviously, with the Money in the Bank matches, anybody can win those.
Yep.
So it's what it is. You'll have to tune in to see who wins those matches. But every other match on this card, it's like you can just handwrite it in. It is nuts.
You know what? And just a real quick before we get to the news, I think it's interesting. Obviously the men's Money in the Bank. I think for Money in the Bank, if you just want to do it, you could just do 4 title Money in the Banks. I mean, you do a cage match for the men, you do a ladder match for the women, You do a different kind of situation for the tag team, and something for the Intercontinental. You just have 5 matches, all of them Money in the Bank, and everybody has an opportunity. You just open it up a lot more, so that way you could open up the intrigue as to, oh my God, who's going to cash in for the Intercontinental title? It's called Money in the Bank. So why do I need to see an irrelevant United States title match and a women's match when we want to see who's going to end up being the champion? And you could just have all the champions take the night off, and just have a pay-per-view where they rest up. And it's just about, this is next. Like, this is the next crop of people for the year. Kind of like the crescendo is WrestleMania, the reset, the lull a little bit. You get to Money in the Bank, and then that just resets everything for the year with 5 new Money in the Bank people that can come out. Like, just like how everybody in AEW has a belt. Well, damn, 5-6 people at WWE have the money. It's like, oh, there's the Money in the briefcase. And you could do a lot with it. And it's just something out of the box. All right, cuz, what made your list? Tell me, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes.
So I got some good stuff for news and notes this week. I'm going to give Dynamite the show of the week. Do you agree?
Yeah, facts.
Blood and Guts was great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so more bad news for Vince McMahon and his behavior, but this time it's coming from his past. Former WWE wrestler Leonard Inzataria has corroborated a former referee, Rita Charlton's, rape allegations against Vince McMahon. Chatterton came forward publicly in 1992 to accuse McMahon of raping her in 1986. However, no charges were brought against McMahon due to the statute of limitations running out prior to her public accusation. A new article from the New York Intelligencer features comments from Leonard Inzataria, who used to wrestle as Mario Mancini for WWE, then WWF, from 1984 to 1991. In the article, Inzatari corroborates Chatterton's allegations that the first time a wrestler has done so, stating that, I remember it like yesterday. She was a wreck. She was shaking. She was crying. According to Inzatari, in the summer of '86, he found Chatterton standing alone near a wrestling ring a few hours before a WWF show. She looked at me and burst into tears, Inzatari recalls, as she grabbed me and I go, Rita, what happened? Chatterton began to reply, I was in Vince's limo. Lenny, he took his penis out. He said Chatterton told him between sobs. He kind of forced my head down there and made it known I wasn't interested in doing that. Then Vince pulled me on top of him. She told her friend, according to her, she was wearing jeans that McMahon forcibly took off. Soon as Inzataria put it, he was inside her. And he says, you're done. Inzatari remembers telling Chatterton, your time is numbered. You're not going to be here. The WWF stopped calling Chatterton for referee appearances starting that summer. So really, really interesting news kind of coming out here. Inzatari doesn't use the word rape while talking about what happened, but describes what sounds like the conventional definition of rape. He says, was she taken advantage of? Absolutely. Was she scared to death? Absolutely. Did she want to do that? Probably not. So really, really interesting. Inzatari said that he said nothing to anybody about what Chatterton told him. He said, you just keep your mouth shut because it's Vince McMahon. Inzatari said, what are you going to do? Stooge on Vince, you're going to be blackballed from the wrestling business forever. There's been no response to this by WWE at this time. This is starting to pick up a little bit of steam. This came out early in the week, and then by the end of the week, it seemed like this was getting discussed in more circles. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how this balloons up over the course of another week, and if WWE is forced to give some type of response on it. But not looking great for Vince. So it's really, really interesting. The man thinks he's Teflon at this point. So what is really going on with Sasha Banks and Naomi? Despite the rumors of Sasha Banks being released from WWE, she and tag team partner Naomi are reportedly still considered to be with the company. According to PW insiders Mike Johnson, Banks and Naomi are still listed on WWE's internal roster, which wouldn't typically be the case for a superstar that was released. Wrestling Inc.'s Raj Giri reported recently that WWE released Banks, and then he ended up going on and doubling down on that. But WWE has not announced the move publicly, and it hasn't confirmed such a decision in any news or reports. On Tuesday, like I said, Geary doubled down, reporting that Banks was released on June 10th. He added that the reason for WWE's silence may be that the company is trying to smooth things over behind the scenes and bring Sasha Banks back into the fold. Banks and Naomi have been off TV since they walked out during the May 16th episode of Raw. Speculation is that AEW star may be on his way out, so you've got possibly Sasha Banks on her way out. Naomi, they're trying to figure things out with her, and she might be on her way out. She might be staying. Who really knows? But it's speculated that this AEW star is leaving. Back in April, Santana tweeted out 126 days, which leads to September 1st, which would be around the time that his AEW contract would expire. He also tweeted out soon this past Monday before Blood and Guts. Santana and Ortiz signed with the company back at the All Out pay-per-view in 2019 and have been a mainstay in the tag division since that day, at least up until recently. On the Fightful post-show review of Blood and Guts, Sean Ross Sapp speculated that there may be some ongoing issues between Santana and Ortiz, noting that the pair don't stand side by side in promos anymore, and they barely interact on screen. They also haven't taken part in a tag team match since February. Now, Santana suffered an injury during Blood and Guts where his leg got stuck underneath him when he attempted a Uranagi slam. So it's going to be interesting to see a couple of things here. What the real issue is Santana actually leaving? And if Santana is leaving, is he gone by September 1st? Remember, WWE will freeze your contract if you're hurt. So it adds on to that back into your contract. Like the whole time you're not able to wrestle, WWE holds you, and then what they do is they tack on, so say it's like 90 days. They'll tack on that 90 days to the end of your contract, and then you've got to wait that out and continue to wrestle for them. So it'd be interesting to see how AEW handles this, because this will be the first time AEW has had to handle a situation like this where a wrestler might not renew their contract. So sticking with the injuries, we've got a bit of a list of who's hurt, who's dealing with what. We'll do a quick run through of who's got what going on. So Adam Cole has a torn labrum in his shoulder and a concussion. Not really sure when he's coming back. Anthony Bowens dealing with a knee injury. He looks like he's fit to come back from what we've seen at Dynamite and on Rampage. It'll be interesting to see when he gets back in the ring. Bobby Fish has an ankle injury. You've got Bryan Danielson. It really seems like he's dealing with a head issue, probably a concussion, maybe a brain injury. Not sure. Again, with Bryan Danielson, you really want to take it easy because it's what ended his career in WWE. Buddy Matthews is dealing with a shoulder injury. CM Punk dealing with a broken foot. Darius Martin dealing with multiple injuries from a nasty car accident that he had. Dax Harwood separated his shoulder at Forbidden Door. Jungle Boy is also dealing with a shoulder injury. Kenny Omega's had multiple surgeries to fix a ton of injuries that he's had. Not really sure when he's coming back. Would assume it would be sooner than later. He took his hiatus from the company back on November 13th of 2021. So it's been roughly 8 going on 9 months for Kenny Omega now. Kip Sabian didn't even realize he was still with the promotion. He has a shoulder injury. Kyle O'Reilly is dealing with an injury. It's unknown what that is. Lee Johnson has a knee injury. Layla Hirsch tore her ACL. Matt Hardy's dealing with a knee injury. Red Velvet is dealing with an injury. It's unknown what that is at this time. The aforementioned Santana dealing with a leg, possibly a knee injury. Scorpio Sky has a strained leg muscle. That's why he's been out of action. And Sky Blue is also dealing with an unknown injury. But that is a ton of people who are banged up right now on that AEW roster. Logan Paul has now officially signed a contract with WWE as of June 30th. According to Ariel Helwani, Logan signed a multi-year deal to compete at multiple premium live events per year, though the exact number has not been disclosed. Helwani also noted that Paul is likely expected to make his first big appearance at SummerSlam, so he could still appear on television beforehand. It sounds like we're going to get The Miz and Logan Paul at SummerSlam, so I expect Logan Paul to appear on Monday Night Raw or on SmackDown prior to SummerSlam. Now, WWE gains a wrestler, but they may be losing one of their biggest NXT stars. According to Dave Meltzer, Io Shirai has not signed her newest contract offer. She'll be a free agent next month if she doesn't sign her new deal. She has told people in Japan that when her contract was up, she wanted to return to Japan to be closer with her family. Now, if Io Shirai does reject the offer and return to Japan, she could very well follow in the footsteps of her former WWE star Kairi Sane, who returned to Stardom after her WWE contract expired earlier this year. And that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ, one of the premier wrestling minds in Detroit. Definitely in the know, definitely great, strong opinions. Make sure you follow him and let us know what you thought about this week's content in AEW and WWE. Big week ahead, as always. WWE moving forward with what's going on this summer. AEW looking to rebound and create new stars and really come off of a great pay-per-view. So it was a great week of wrestling. Anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, you can find Detroit Sports Podcast. Guys like Chuck, man, that's great to hear that they see you, they understand what's going on, and they say, hey, keep up the good work. And the messages you guys share with us really keeps us going. When you say, hey, we've been following you for years, the support of the podcast, the readership, the allowing us to be able to talk about wrestling and even get denied formally. A little bit of inside scoop here. I tried to interview Tony Khan, but he didn't give me the time of day. Even though he said that Detroit meant the world to him, he did not do a lot of Detroit press. Now, I think one or two wrestlers did in the media, but not Tony Khan. So that'll be the mission. He's now in the wanted list, meaning that for those that have followed the podcast, if you're on Doc's wanted list, you shall receive an email, whether it be daily, weekly, bi-weekly, AEW media shall receive. And even if it went through, I emailed Tony Khan himself at his allelitewrestling.com email address. And I said, Tony, I'm coming. You're on my radar. I'm persistent. I'm like a gnat. So we will try to get Tony Khan on this podcast. Could it happen? Maybe. Will it happen? Probably not in the near future, but we'll try to make it happen. Why? Because the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast is your great source for quality entertainment and professional podcasting. Cuz, thanks a lot. It's the best part of my week. The couple hours that we spend bullshitting and breaking down sports and professional wrestling. Let's do this again next week. Let's do it. Saturday, baby. It's going to be a good time on the next episode of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.